This video is going to describe another case study, and this one is of a patient who had 4 years of thoracic pain, which is mid-back pain, and it completely resolved. So if you're interested in hearing the details of what happened and how it resolved, then watch this video. So many times pain comes on with pregnancy. Different types of pains. It might be sciatica, might be SPD, which is symphysis pubis dysfunction, which is pain around the pelvis. It could be pain after the birth. It could be pain from an epidural. These are all associations to the pain someone felt at the time. And these things actually happen to them. They might have had an epidural, they might have had that diagnosis of SPD, they might have had sciatica, they might have been told they've got sacroiliac joint dysfunction, and the pains are from those areas. They didn't deny the structural element of those things at all, or any other pains. This lady's was a thoracic pain that developed. But the point is, the pain fires at a time of real high emotional charge. So if you've been lucky enough to have children, those months before you have them is pretty fraught, especially with your first one, and safe to say with only the others actually. And I hadn't been the one even carrying them, so to be a mother carrying a child and the responsibility that comes with that, well, it felt huge to me as a dad, or potential dad. So it must be even bigger to the person holding the responsibility of that moment. And it isn't just the responsibility of then, it's the fears that come up about what will I be like as a parent, what was my parenting like. So there's thoughts that come up from the past, from the present, from the future. These are all anxieties or emotional charges that can be exciting, and you can look back at great memories of your childhood and think what a great parent you can be and the great things you're going to do. But it can also bring up fears, and it's the fears and the negative emotions that are present when someone experiences pain, or potentially brings on that pain actually, that gets this name of one thing or another. That's the dangerous connection when it comes to chronic pain. Because let's assume there's a back pain or a sciatica or a symphysis pubis dysfunction, a structural element that happens in that moment. Well, the tissue, the joint, the structure, the muscle, if there was any trauma or injury in that moment, within 3 months, normally, the tissue heals. That's without any complication or underlying history of other conditions that might affect the healing. So normally, that would respond to the body's normal healing process. And that happens in almost all of us. But in some people, the pain from those things stays. About 1 in 5 people develop chronic pain, and these are some of the conditions that people link it to from pregnancy. So in reality, the tissue's healed, but the fears that were present and maybe in a heightened state for that person with that pain means the emotions around it stay during the time it would take the tissue to heal. So in a heightened state of emotion, experiencing pain, that combination means that long after any tissue trauma, if there was any, has gone, the emotional charge that's been connected to it means that pain is so easy to fire whenever that emotion appears again in that person's life. So you'll hear stories of, I've had pain since I had my kids, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So we know that something else has happened where that connection's been made, and that's a real connection, it's a real pain, but actually it's not triggered by ongoing tissue damage. Absolutely not. There could be changes there, but those changes are found in people who don't have pain. What's different about these patients with the pain is the emotions are still there linked to that pain. The charge and the connection between them is so strong that it doesn't need new physical injury. It might need physical movement to trigger it, but it's not at a level that causes damage. I just bend over to pick up a sock. I was just cleaning the house. I was just turned, bang, and their pain comes on. Or even there isn't a physical cue sometimes. I just woke up, didn't do anything, and the pain came on. And in those cases, it's the emotional charge that's happening in that person's life. So these spikes of flares, or my back went off, or my sciatica came back, it's more linked to the stresses that come with events in the life or times in the life that correlate with the episodes of these flare-ups. In some people, they stay in such a heightened state that the pain is constant. Totally constant. And this lady, this has happened to her. So she had some risk factors. If you think about, you looked at the traits that people can have, and she had some of the traits that were linked to this hypervigilant state that people often demonstrate. Very driven, quite self-sacrificing, always doing for others, maybe lacking some social support and care from a partner at the time who was working away. Even without that support, she was doing things for other people, helping out with childcare for some other people when she struggled with her own. So quite nice traits in essence, but traits that often lead to overload. So this lady was in constant pain. So it's thoracic pain, so that's the mid-back, and the pain radiated around her chest wall. And that was more or less constant. This chest wall pain was more or less constant, had been for 4 years. Been fully investigated medically by the doctors for like gallbladder problems, and they all came back negative. And more or less said you have to live with that pain. And it was aggravated with certain activities, and the pain in the back would be aggravated with using her arm. She did a job where the arm was up and elevated a lot, so at a certain time of doing that activity, the pain in the back would be worse. So there's mechanical influences to it, but then there was other influences that made no difference at all. It would be pain at night, it would be pain when she wasn't active, and it just didn't make sense to her. So I explained the physiology of pain and her pain, and gave relevance to her, what had happened to her. You don't have to psychoanalyse anybody from a long time ago. They can look if they want, but really it's just about changing the patterns and breaking the pattern and giving them awareness that they are not damaged. The movement that they are feeling is real and it's triggering physical tissue, but that tissue is responding, or the brain's responding to that physical tissue's movement with pain, to a non-painful stimulus. So this constant pain she experienced on her chest and this thoracic pain at the back influenced by slightly different things, but both influenced by things that elicit pain that she interprets as damage when really there is no damage. If there was any, it's healed. If there's a scar there, it's a scar, and you have other scars on your body that don't even hurt. So what's the difference between the scar that hurts and doesn't 5 years down the line? Well, the emotion attached to it, not the damage. So with her, I explained the physiology of her pain as best as I saw it, listened to her and heard a story and could hear how overloaded she was, and just shone a light back on it to her. And for her to sometimes see what it looks like from the outside, and that's often hard for the person who's in it to see it. And in terms of treating her pain, so I couldn't really do much for the chest pain manually, physically. It's not really appropriate, and some therapists can't even touch anyway, but we'd had a movement that this was a threat, this arm up to a certain degree was a threat, so he used that in a non-threatening position. So we could take her arm out so far and it didn't make any difference to her pain, so I could explain to her that this is safe. This taking your arm out to the side, it's safe. If I got 100 people to do this, who would it damage? She said no one. So I said it's safe. And I used Howard Schubiner, a little mantra, I suppose. I mentioned this in one of the other videos, and I'll probably do a video on it in detail. But he says 4 or 5 things, but and he always repeats them back to the patient and gets them to say them as well. But in this instance, I said them. So it's I am safe, I'm healthy and strong. There's nothing seriously wrong with me, and I'm going to be fine. I am fine. And you can play with the words a little bit, but they're safe words. They're almost words you'd tell a child who's recently been injured. You'd whisper them quietly or talk to them, say they're going to be okay. You wouldn't say, it's really dangerous that, and I think your finger is going to fall off. I've done that in the past to them. It's a bit cruel, but you realise you're going too far when they start crying. You say, no, you'll be fine. So you say safe words to children and they calm down. Well, the person who has all these traits, often they're not very kind to themselves, not consciously. it's just that they don't set aside time for themselves to look after themselves. And they'll justify doing that because they're so busy with everyone else, and that's fine in short term. And if there's no pain in their life and no ill health, then they've got the balance about right. But if there's pain, often that's a trait that they find hard to change. So we just did it. I just did it for her. Just got to calmly to place a focus on me moving around that's safe, in a very safe environment, just out to the side. And I'm safe. I'm healthy and strong. There's nothing seriously wrong with me. I'm going to be fine. I showed her a breathing technique that we did a little bit. I got to focus on her breathing as I did the movements, and it was as simple as that. And she started to frown, and she said the pain in my chest started to change. And she said it's gone. So I got to place a focus back on it. So in your mind's eye, place your focus on that pain in your chest. And she looked for it. She said it's coming back. I said that's okay. I said you can now see how it changes when you change your perception of it. So without any fear, just place your focus on me moving your arm again. I'm safe. There's nothing seriously wrong with me. I'm fine. I'm healthy and strong. The words just come intuitively. You might think of different ones to that, but these are the ones that Howard Schubiner discussed cases like this, and he presented a course on this neural circuitry assessment of pain, if you like. It was fascinating, and it's around what we're talking about. But using that language seems to amplify that calmness, which it does with a child. So if a child was injured, you wouldn't just look at them and say you'll be fine. Put plaster on. Dead stonewall. You're okay. Give them a facial reaction. You're going to be all right. The tone of your voice changes. You might smile or look them in the eyes, so you mean it because you truly believe it. And if that child looks at you and you are the person of truth to them, you've told them that Santa Claus is real and the Tooth Fairy and the Boogeyman. If you've played that game, don't recommend it. Again, you create your own problems. And the Man in the Moon. Then these things are real. So if you're telling someone they're going to be okay with that conviction, and from a position of medical authority, you have that advantage, and that you can do as much harm as good if you tell them the wrong things. But if you tell them the right things and they believe them, in the year that's been there for maybe a short time, but in pain that's been there several years, it's often fear that keeps it stuck. So we placed the focus on her arm again. And she said, it's gone. Now, because it had gone a couple of times, she was puzzled by it, and she smiled and laughed. She said, how's that? Why? I said, well, you're feeling calm and you're feeling safe, and you placed your focus on something that truly know is safe, just for a short moment, and you've seen a window of opportunity where you felt calm enough to see that pain disappear. And as soon as you don't see the threat anymore, your body doesn't feel the threat. And that threat is simply a perception, and that manifestation of that perception is pain. I said, look for the pain, but look for it calmly, with a curious filter of safety. Look in your mind's eye where that pain is. She said, I can't find it. I can't see it. I can't feel it. I said, we're done. It's done. We sat back up, checked the thoracic rotation. There was still a little bit of discomfort in the thoracic spine, which I hadn't really focused on because we were stationary and just using the arm as a trigger, if you like. But we'd set the boundaries very, very safely, so I knew it was safe. But she could see it was safe, and I could reassure her of that. And so we sat her up, and rotation was much, much better. So the responsibility for her to maintain this is some movements of the thoracic spine, so it's relevant to the context of where she feels her pain, but it's in a range that she can know that this is safe. Okay, this is safe, I'm healthy and strong, I'm going to be fine, there's nothing seriously wrong with me. And it's okay to use words that might have negative connotations, so seriously wrong. You could say, oh, well, that's using language that could trigger fear, but it's the tone of voice that's key. I'm safe. If you spoke to a dog and said, you stupid dog, you really, really stupid, horrible dog, the dog would wag its tail. It doesn't matter the words, it's the tone and the delivery that's so important. The words have meaning to people who can understand words, but if the tone's okay and it's reassured, it's okay. But the emphasis should be on safety, making the person feel safe, making their system feel safe, and then giving them tools that they can repeat with movement, with thoughts, with a breathing pattern that she used. And I explained another video about how she taught that pattern to her daughter, and the output, then the feeling is different. So I saw her, I've seen her twice since. So I saw her maybe 10 days later, week 10 days later, pain free, thoracic, the chest pain gone, completely gone, and a little bit in the thoracic spine, but intermittent now, not constant. She'd done a couple of things around the house, and she said, I can't believe I've been able to do them, things that she hasn't been able to do for 4 years. So she had cause and effect, if you like. So, but she was okay with that, and I followed her up another 10 days later, and she was kind of more or less pain free. She said, I feel so much happier in my life. I can't believe the difference it's made. But it's clear as a bell, because if you're in pain, you could be the nicest person in the world, but I'll tell you what, when you've got a headache, or you've got a bad back, or you're in agony, you've been for weeks, the world looks a lot different. Your partner irritates you a bit quicker, kids might irritate you, work's harder to think about, basic tasks you don't have the energy for, pain is wearing, so the world looks totally different. And if you're lucky enough to be able to change that experience and the person has control over it, then all the stuff that looked a problem and you micromanage, once you see it through the filter of no pain, and you feel like you've got some control of that, then you're living in a different world. So she did so well, and I've discharged her. So the result was really good. It isn't always that quick. There's often some resistance to the idea that this person's pain that they've had for so long is not wholly structural, and that's totally understandable. But if you can make that shift, or the person's prepared to look at other reasons for the pain and go with you a little bit, and then take responsibility for that new thought process, and breathe in a different way, move in a different way, they will feel different. It's fascinating, pain with pregnancy, and over the years we've seen so many patients that I'd like to go back and find them and maybe tell them I can help them, but we can only help them with what we have at the time. And now I'm quite confident that people with pain of any length of time from pregnancy or any other trauma can recover. They can recover on their own. They can recover with a friend, a therapist, a group setting. They just have to be aware of the mechanisms that they have to start to use, and change is possible. I hope you've enjoyed this video today. If you're in pain, go and make a commitment to take a tiny step to plan the next step in your recovery.